Art Chat is made possible by the support of the Artistic Harmonies Association. Create your next aha experience with us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art Chat. I'm your host, Linda Riesenberg Fisler, and today I'm going to be talking with Elizabeth Whelan. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on, Linda.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Now, I'm going to disclaimer up front. Elizabeth and I only met about 5 minutes ago. So there'll be probably plenty of questions that we'll be doing throughout this whole thing. I want to mention real quick, Elizabeth, if I can, we are doing a chat, create, and cocktail kind of fun Zoom party, virtual Zoom party. And I have two co-hosts that do that. And I just want to let everybody know that the next one's in June. So keep an eye out on the website, our Artistic Harmonies website, and also on Facebook in the Art Chat community there. So that you can join us. We've had a really high number. We have 100 seats that we can fill. And we've gotten, I think our highest is 68, and we've gotten 54, and we've gotten 64. So I'll let you guys know who the co-host is going to be via Facebook. I'm not going to come on a special art podcast and talk about that, but just wanted to let you know they're really being, they're successful. People are loving it. We have a great time. The next one in June is going to be, and we may do this, it may be something we do every month now or every other month now, because I think it's going to be fun. Wear your dingiest, most paint-ridden, ugliest clothes that you possibly can, and we're gonna actually talk about, we're gonna show you guys. So if you want to be on camera, we'll show you. If you don't, we won't show you. So again, welcome, Elizabeth. Let's get talking about you and your art journey. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you can.
Let's see. Gosh, without getting too crazily biographical.
Don't start at 2 years of age. Just
yeah, exactly. Well, I am originally from England and grew up in Canada and Michigan, and then lived in Virginia and Maryland, and now up here in Massachusetts. So I've taken this big kind of spiral. And of course, all of that has sort of influenced, what I do and what is interesting to me. But in general, I'm one of those people that I guess we call ourselves self-taught, but I mean, who really is self-taught? But I don't have a formal education in art. I did learn sort of on the job. I worked in screen print for quite a number of years as an illustrator for a t-shirt company, and then did some graphic design for a couple of newspapers, and then freelanced after that, doing graphic design and illustration and web design and that sort of thing. So that took me, up until, I guess, about 13 years ago. And then I suddenly got the urge to paint. I had never painted in oils before. And the idea of painting kind of on spec for galleries seemed crazy to me. I was like, what do you mean you're not going to get paid? I've gone through all of these, when you're a graphic designer, you get paid for your work, So I started to look into, what kind of artwork could you get actually paid for up front, and landed in portraiture. Didn't know anything about it. Ended up taking a workshop with Daniel Green, who was very well known in the portrait circles, and just fell in love with it. You're telling people's stories. And so that has been sort of I guess, the main thrust of my art career ever since. Although now I like to paint everything. I mean, I really do feel that it's how you paint, not what you paint, that's important.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like a whirlwind growing up. And were your parents like in the military, or were you, I mean, England to Canada to the US so I guess you're a British citizen, right?
Yeah, British and American. But I think that when people emigrate, they often do so almost by mistake. My parents, my dad was finishing up a PhD at the University of Toronto, and they really thought they'd go back to England. And I was just a wee kid. But they stayed. My dad got a job in Ottawa. My brothers popped out. We ended up moving to Michigan, which wasn't too far away. So life takes you on unexpected roads. And then for me personally, when I was in my mid-30s, I decided to move aboard a sailboat. I was down in Virginia, and we had water all around, and I'd always wanted to do that. Actually, my first idea was I was going to have a studio on a boat, and that lasted all of 2 weeks, because when you're sitting there at the dock rocking back and forth, you realize you're not going to manage that. It's not going to work. So I had to get a studio on land, but I still lived on a boat. And so that's how I met my partner, Bill. and we moved up to St. Michael's, Maryland, and then up to Martha's Vineyard, in part because he's a boat builder. So that kind of creativity and, I just built my work around, the types of jobs I could do and live that kind of lifestyle. I don't live aboard a boat now. It's a little too cold up here, and at some point, the land does beckon. But that's sort of, that's another reason why I have such an interest in maritime painting, marine subject matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So do me a favor and tell everybody, I have your website open, but I want you to tell everybody your website so that they can go and visit and look at paintings while they're listening to us and different things like
Oh,
that.
that's great. So that's Elizabeth-Whelan.com. I think you can also get there with elizabethwhelan.com. And I've got portraits and landscapes and marine subject matter. It's sort of building out with a lot of information also. I like to encourage younger artists. There are questions that I had. Internet was just a new thing when I was younger, and it was hard to find information about what jobs were even available to have. So I like to answer people's questions. So I've got a frequently asked questions, that sort of thing. There's a bunch of info there, so I hope you enjoy it.
It's a wonderful website. So please go and
Thank
join
you.
it. And on the video version, you will see that Elizabeth's website is above her head. So you can always see that there. It really is. It is a wonderful. She has paintings there. She has, like you said, a frequently asked question page, which I have open, so I can answer some questions and stuff. But let's talk. Let's go back to, you said you studied with Daniel Green, and if I'm not mistaken, Daniel is now in Florence, Italy, doing.
No, he is,
No?
unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was quite elderly.
Different Daniel Green.
Different
Okay.
Daniel. Different Daniel, yeah. And he was a marvelous fellow. What happened was, when I started painting and wanted to do portraiture, I had no idea how to mix paint and get the same results the next day. And for skin tones, you have to understand what you're doing. So I took a class with him, mostly so I could learn a little bit of his process about how he laid out his palette, how he went about doing that. And then the only other real kind of workshop that I did along those lines was with Bert Silverman in about 2014. I did a week workshop with him, and that was more about how to think about your art. I mean, he was teaching painting and drawing and this, that, and the other. But I was interested. I just like the way he thinks. He has a very interesting take. Really sort of gets you out of your own personal thinking process and sort of contemplating your role in art in general. And so really I felt that those two were sort of enough to get me started. I take other classes, don't get me wrong. I mean, if something looks interesting to me, I'll take it. But I would say, in terms of kind of like giving me a little bit of direction, Daniel Green and Bert Silverman were definitely it.
Oh, great. I also am self-taught. I did not go to college. My journey started back in 92. So I've been at this a little bit longer than you have, as far as just, you said 13 years, I believe. And, I've been doing this for, gosh, it's getting close to 30 years. I actually left Procter and Gamble to become an artist. So,
that's so cool.
yeah. It's been fun. Artist and author. So kind of do both. But, and I'm really finding it interesting too, from the standpoint of how many artists realize that they have to know how to write as well. I mean, you look at your website, you got your frequently asked questions, you've got your artist statement, all of that information. I think it helped both of us having that business background first. I think you give I think you give some great advice about the business side to on your FAQ page. To young artists. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, you've got 13 years of experience. You've been self-taught. So here we are sitting here trying to help the younger generation that's coming out, some from college, huge debt.
Right.
The other thing that I found really interesting too is the fact that you said, don't go into debt to do this, So we'll talk about that after you talk a little bit about, give some of that great advice that you have on your website out there to our listeners.
Well, I think because I've had the 13 years in fine art, but I had the 20 years of being a freelancer in graphic design, marketing, and that sort of thing. And my niche, so to speak, was people coming to me who were just starting a business, and they needed a logo and they needed marketing. materials. And after a while, I found I was giving them marketing advice. And so that helped me a lot, of course, when I started basically what was a new business. Um, but I started to see that there was there were a number of preconceptions that people coming out of college had about how the art business was going to work.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I'm mentoring a young woman. Well, actually, I would say I'm past mentoring her. She's well on her way now. But we still chat and do projects together.
Mhm.
Um, but it was about the art business, not so much how to paint. She knows how to paint. Um, I think it is difficult to understand if you're not going to attach yourself to a gallery, how are you going to go about trying to make a business out of this? And it isn't always, I think some of the schools set you up to think, well, you go get a gallery right away and then they do everything for you. And when that doesn't happen, people fall in a rut and
Mhm.
they find themselves in jobs that have nothing to do with what they went to school for, and they sort of lose the thread. And so I'm very keen on suggesting to people, hey, go take a job in graphic design, go learn something about business. Even if it's art related, that's great. Even if you're working for a non-art related business, you can watch how a business is run. You can learn how to not run a business as
Right.
well as you can learn how to run one. Um, all of that stuff is important. And I particularly found that the graphic design and web design stuff was far more important than I thought. I can create all my own marketing materials. I can work on my own website. There is nothing that I need for a show that I have to depend on somebody else creating.
Right.
And it's also given me sort of an approach towards trying to be creative and come up with new ideas on how to entertain people and get them to enjoy art in a way they might not have thought was possible. The galleries and such make it pretty stuffy, and I'm very keen on unstuffing it.
Great. I love you. We just met. I already like you. So, yeah. So, and one of the things that we're talking about too, I mean, what a lot of artists don't understand is really how much of whatever they price their paintings at and whatever the gallery agrees to sell them at, a very high percentage of that goes back to the gallery because they are doing
Exactly.
a lot of marketing for you.
Yeah,
They are doing, they're hanging your work and and they could easily take you down and put somebody else up. So
right.
especially if you're not selling. So there's all the sales work and different things like that that the gallery is doing for you. So they certainly do deserve some kind of commission. Um,
Exactly.
I think 60% is a little high, but that's me talking. So yeah, so it's kind of I'm a lot like Elizabeth in that I like doing a lot of things myself. A lot of that includes trying to sell my own work. And I have been in galleries that are also framers, which tells you something about the gallery audience as well.
Sure.
That you have to have somebody framing your framing
Right.
operation going on right next to a gallery, if you will, or in hand with it. So yeah, so it is an interesting world out there. I don't, as far as rules, do I have to go to college? Then I have to be in a gallery, then I have to no.
Right.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. You
You
you can do
make
you
your own
can make
stuff.
it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
can completely make it up. And I really honestly think that I wouldn't be as I mean, I'm saying, oh, I'm a reasonable artist at this point, but I don't think I would have half the ideas that I do if I hadn't been a lifeguard, a bartender, worked at an employment agency, worked in a screen printer, worked for a newspaper. All of that becomes part of your experience. You pick that up. There is no shame in not all of a sudden being, the wonderkind in the big loft apartment in New York City with a gallery, because those people often disappear out of the public view a
It
few
is.
years later, and then we don't hear about them again. Because I think what these schools often don't explain to students is that we're artists for our whole lives, but galleries and tastes change constantly. In order to continue to be relevant, you have to reinvent yourself often over and over again, following your own desires and your own things that you like. But there may not always be a market for that all the time. So how do you deal with those ups and downs? Yeah,
Right.
I started off by having another job on the side while I got going. I thought that was an important thing. I wanted to be able to buy good quality um, supplies and that sort of thing. And I wanted to be able to do some shows where I wasn't worrying about making money. I just wanted to get my name out there and try to build a little cadre of people who liked my work. This is expensive. That's another thing I don't think that the schools really tell you.
Mhm.
I'm not just talking about, business cards and that kind of thing. When you're starting to frame art, when you're starting to ship art and you want it to look good and professional, you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars that you may not be getting back right away. Because if you're not well known yet, you can't charge a high price. It just isn't going to work.
Right.
And so you have to have some way to cushion yourself as you make that journey. Now, if you do that and you use your resources wisely, you can propel yourself relatively quickly towards a self-sustaining art career. But to expect it's just going to drop in your lap off the bat, I think some schools do a disservice by trying to sell a myth to students about how the art market really works.
Yeah, there's a lot of traps out there that
There are,
a lot of artists can fall into, and then unfortunately a bad experience will then possibly deter them. And I think we talked a little about, don't go into debt right when you started, and
right.
a lot of that I think makes sense. I mean, I left, as we talked about, I left a Fortune 500 company, had a really good salary, started to learn about painting, and is it something I wanted to pursue on my own, as a hobby initially starting out. And then I resigned from Procter & Gamble after all my goals were achieved there of what I wanted to do, basically
Right.
making sure that the human resource director that said I would never be promoted was wrong. I was. And then it was like, what am I doing here? I want to leave. So, one of the things that I did, since we became a one income family, was that I would not use any of our personal finances, our personal money,
Right.
to support my artwork. So any of the pay that was coming in from my work,
Right.
my own business over on the side, not our personal. And that sometimes I had to, pay bills.
Sure.
But it also got paid back. So it was like
Yeah.
a loan. So I treated it like a business from the beginning. And, you're probably, you hinted at that a little bit, that, you took all these different jobs so that you didn't have to worry about the finance of your art.
Right. Yeah, and some of those jobs, of course, were just when I was younger and didn't know what the heck I was doing. You know, hence the lifeguarding,
Yeah.
But I
Fun,
think,
fun.
yeah, I think it is important to think about, that there isn't one way to
Way,
become an
right.
artist. There is no formula. Anything works. Anything is fine.
Mhm.
It's just like the myth of the, artist starving in the garret apartment. You don't have to do that. But
Yeah.
I think I was well served by reading a book on freelancing on graphic design years ago when I was starting off, and it said, do not rent the fancy office. Do not buy the special office equipment. Work in your bedroom until you can afford the decent computer. It was sort of
Right.
talking, it was saying it was the same thing. And what they were saying was don't go into debt when you've hardly got any clients. It makes no sense whatsoever. And
Yeah.
so I was able to do the same thing as you because I had another small income stream, but it was something. I could turn the money I did make off of art back into, stockpiling, inventory in terms of canvases and paint and brushes. And I do that to this day. So
Mhm.
that regardless of the ups and downs, sometimes it can take a long time to get paid.
Mhm.
Sometimes a painting just takes a long time. And so there is a long time before you're going to get paid. You have to be able to even that out. That comes with time and practice, but it also comes with trying to avoid debt wherever you possibly can. And I feel for anyone coming out of school with thousands of dollars of debt, when I don't know where that money is in the art world for them to get that back. I just
Right.
don't know where that is. I mean,
And
it's a total shame.
yeah, and there's I think a big disservice or missed opportunity by some of these schools to teach artists business skills.
Right.
It's like how many
Right.
artists that come out of school have no idea how to
Yeah.
run their own business. And
Right.
I
Right.
think that's a huge disservice, which then fuels into this, failure possibly. of, and sour taste in their mouth about being part of the art industry that's out there. So, and
Right.
then the art industry itself is just like any other business and any other art,
Sure.
any other
Exactly.
opportunity, if you will. I mean, there's pitfalls there. There's people that want to unfortunately make money off of you.
Right. Right.
There's there's some fraud, there's you name it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder why Hollywood doesn't get more involved in making movies about the art world, because I mean it'd be
It
fun.
is a little crazy. Yeah.
It
I
is.
mean, you meet really good people, but then you
Yes.
meet shysters as well. And I think that unfortunately this whole gallery thing, sometimes you get a good gallery that looks after you for your entire life. And sometimes you get somebody who suddenly disappears with your paintings and you have no idea what happened. And
Right.
how do you vet that? And that's why becoming part of the community and asking other artists and getting people's input, that kind of thing is so
Mhm.
important.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
also is the idea that this is a business. You're either doing art as a hobby or you're actually running a business. You're It's not so much that you're creating a product like a bottle of lotion. you
Right.
know, and people artists really, hit back on that. And just like, I take a lot of commissions. A lot of people don't like doing that.
Yeah.
But I think that you can express yourself just fine within a commission. And I think you can also enjoy the art of business. I
Mhm.
think it's fun to come up with wild and interesting marketing ideas. And I've sort of made a little tiny name for myself locally of doing things like portrait unveilings that are kind of fun and some stuff will happen. Why not have a good time?
Yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
can do serious artwork, but there's a lot of fun to be had in art. We just have to get ourselves away from the idea that it's always going to be in a glass-fronted gallery with people swanning around with drinks and I'm suddenly going to sell out my whole show. Those things do happen to people. It's not like they don't, but there's a whole wide world of art business that can happen that doesn't even touch on that kind of experience and is
Yeah.
still wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think you and I are very similar in that we have other interests than just painting. So we have, let's touch on, if we can, real quick, kind of a work life balance. There's
Sure.
a lot of stuff that goes on, I think, that both of us have going on. I have this art chat podcast. I've got the chat create and cocktails. I cycle, I hike. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. There's no way I'm not getting outside. So, I could paint outside, but the funny thing is that's the last thing I want to do when I'm outside. I'm in a perfect place to plein air paint, and I
Oh,
have no
that's
desire
so
to
funny.
chase light. I like this. I like the steadiness of my studio, the steady light of it. And
Sure.
one of the things that I think is really interesting is, it's constantly a battle for me to have that work life balance.
Yeah.
So give us some tips where we can say, yeah, Elizabeth said.
Well, I think that all I can really say is that life is chaotic, and it's a myth that we're going to suddenly have this time and space to be able to create. So I live here on Martha's Vineyard, and there are many well-off people here. I'm not one of them. But there are some, and they, I often see people having these studios built in their backyard, gorgeous studios that any one of us would die for. But
Mm,
when they have that, it doesn't make them the artist they thought it was going to make. And there's some of them will dig in and be like, I'm going to work and I'm going to make it happen. And that's great. And others sort of abandon the dream because it does take so much work. And other things are happening in our lives all the time. So for some people, it's, caregiving perhaps to an older relative, or maybe you're bringing up children or whatever. There's just laundry to be done. There's
dinners
all
to be
of this
made.
stuff going on. I've got a sick chicken right now I'm trying to look
Oh.
at after. Um, there's so much that goes on, and all you can do is what you can do. And rather than go, hey, I should have, a 9 to 5 type of in the studio. I'm going to work a certain number of hours. I'm going to have this regulated. Yeah, I've talked to a number of artists who've tried that and said, hey, it doesn't work. And then they beat themselves up. And my feeling is you just keep moving forward. Um, I like to use the analogy of it's like painting horses on a carousel when the carousel is moving. And you're
Mm.
just standing there with a paintbrush and you're trying to smack at this horse and that horse as they go by. And
Good
sooner or later,
analogy.
some horses are going to be painted,
Yep.
but you just have to keep doing it. It's the carousel is never going to stop and let you just completely paint beautifully one horse. That is not how life works. And I think that knowing that if you're in a situation like that where you feel like you're just not getting the time to concentrate, if you can put in an hour, if you can put in a half an hour, 20 minutes, if you can do 2 hours, maybe you get a whole afternoon, just take it, and do what you can with it. And I want to tell you a story that I think a lot of women in particular will relate to, not just women, so don't everybody get on me. um, but years ago, there was a fellow, he's still, I think he's the head of the Portrait Society of America, really fine artist. And he was getting up in front of folks talking about his workday, and he was doing a Q&A, and somebody said, well, how many hours do you put in at the studio? And he said something like 12 hours. And somebody asked, well, how do you do that? You have a family in this big house in the studio. And of course, he had a partner who was taking, his wife and all of that, and people coming in to be helpful. And every woman in the audience groaned.
I know why.
Because, yeah, I mean, because we were just like, and there is no day that I've had 12 hours to work on art unless I've been so pressed for a deadline that I had to shove everything else aside. And I think it's okay to know that that is how it goes. You can still accomplish amazing work. You just keep at it, and you just don't let that get you down. And until the time when I have a fleet of people coming in to answer my every need,
Yeah.
I'm just going to have to keep doing it the way life serves it to you,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important to understand is, maybe that person does have 12 hours to put in the studio, but I think the next question after he says that is, you're standing 12 hours behind your easel painting,
Right,
because
right.
I know a lot of people, and it's fine because that's the way they want to do it. And I think what both Elizabeth and I are saying is, you find what works for you,
Exactly.
and don't let anybody else attack you for that. This
Yeah,
is your
yeah,
way. This is your way of
yeah.
doing it. But I mean, I know a lot of different artists, and all of them have a different work practice, and all of them have
Yeah.
have outside interests besides art. So, like one of the things that I have always done while I'm outside, whether I'm hiking or cycling or playing golf or doing whatever outside activity is. And I mentored under a plein air painter. So that's why
Oh, cool.
I keep saying this stuff. I'm walking down a golf course and I'm going, oh, that's an interesting tree. Oh, look at that green. How would I mix that? So
Right,
everybody else is
right.
going, where am I going to hit my next shot?
Sure.
And I'm like going, oh, okay, we got a corner coming up here. I'm on my bicycle. Oh, there's a corner coming up here. Oh, look at that creek. Oh, yeah, well, okay.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, we're artists all the time, right?
exactly. So,
Yeah,
if you want to count that as part of your 12 hours, like I do,
sure. Yeah,
then go for it and do it, because you're actually looking at colors under the right light, and
exactly.
trying to mix that color comes later, but you have it in your memory what it is you're trying to grasp and what it is you're trying to create. So aside from that, I want to go and kind of talk to you a little bit about what was it about portraiture that drew you to that.
Hmm.
Are you a
Well,
people person? Is that why?
no, not really.
Okay.
I mean, I
Shoot
like
that
people.
theory.
I mean, it's really funny because I'm not antisocial in any way, but I'm not a person who likes to hang out at parties and things like that. I find being around people a little exhausting, even though I enjoy talking to people one on one or in a small group very much. I think what I enjoy is the challenge of bringing that person's personality and putting it on canvas. It is such a challenge and it is difficult to do. Whereas I love landscapes, but I don't find the challenge aspect there. And I also think it's so important to tell our stories in various different ways. And people tend to think of portraiture as a sort of highfalutin thing. I'm in my poet shirt on a velvet couch, or I'm in my long gown, and I got my hair piled up to heaven, and that's somehow how you should be for a portrait. And I tend to specialize, as people will see on the website. Um, I do have some, formal portraits of different sorts, but I also like people in their own environment, people making things, people just being relaxed and, yeah, outside, inside, whatever it happens to be, because those are our stories. So often I will try to, when I meet somebody, I'll almost interview them to begin with to find out a little bit more about them. Because that stays in my head when I'm painting. I sort of try to bring all of that out. So that's kind of, oh, I see you've got a picture of Nat.
Yeah,
That's
I
Nat
wanted to show
Benjamin.
this one. I think this is gorgeous. I
Thank
went
you.
and looked at all your artwork, and it's all gorgeous, but this one really grabbed me because you just grabbed that person's personality and just let me get rid of this on the back.
Well, he's become my poster boy. He's a wonderful fellow boat builder here on Martha's Vineyard, and I've got him on my cards now. So he's going to start charging me for that, I think, sooner or later.
Well, good for him. So,
But
yeah, but
I did,
I did want to
yeah.
show up your work so that you can see this. But yeah, this one just really jumped at me. I really liked this one.
It's interesting, I think, to, when you meet people, and I think it's a little bit easier, of course, if you know someone, and I do know Nat, but I've learned to sort of, even within a short period of time, try to find out what's interesting about a person and how they think, how they think about themselves. I often talk about portraiture being, a message in the bottle to future generations. This is when I go into a museum, the portraits I love are the ones that make me really go, hey, I know that person's clothing is different, but I know somebody who's just like that person, to see them doing something, casual or, not wearing special clothing, that kind of thing. I think it's really important. So that was sort of, the key for
Mhm.
me to portraiture. I think there are two different types of artists. One who has an idea for portraiture, one who has an idea about, how to pose somebody and paint a painting that they want to have, and another who sort of is willing to take that person and their own ideas and sort of, try to paint that person's life. So, back to the fellow who's by the sunfish, the boat, and he's just kind of small in the picture there. So that's a portrait I did of somebody who did not feel that he wanted to be front and center in a portrait at all, but was very keen on the idea of sort of capturing something important to him, which was, an activity he loves to do when he is up here on the island in the summertime. And to me, that's portraiture as much as, am I getting the physical likeness right?
Right, absolutely. So yeah, so I just was going to click through here and let folks see it. This is a very nice one, and you got to work on an animal. You got to work on a horse on this one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
and this is kind of fun because this is an author. Her name is Geraldine Brooks, and I didn't want to have her, posed with a pile of paper looking like an author. In fact, I've got a couple of authors, I think, up on my website, neither one of whom are with pencil and paper because they have other interests and other thoughts. Interestingly, she just that was a horse she had just started writing. This was a few years ago, and she's just published a book called The Horse,
no,
which is we didn't know that at the time, but I felt the relationship between her and this horse that she was getting to know that was a little shy. I thought that was just amazing.
yeah,
And as
absolutely.
important, if not more important, about her personality than showing her with a pile of paper.
Interesting work that you have out here. This is a biologist, so
Yeah, I did a series. I did a show that I put on about science and art, and I called it Inseparable. And this was a few years back at a large gallery here on the island. 34 other artists contributed on the theme of the periodic table of elements. And then I did some large figurative work, some abstract, and some portraiture to
oh wow.
whole thing up. And so I selected 6 women on the island who were involved in different aspects of science. And this was really kind of around the time when the STEM, women in STEM was very important. And
Mhm.
so, just finding them at work around here, I wanted other young women or young men to see the types of jobs that were available in the sciences locally.
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, I was really enjoying this. I wanted to get back to because I think I'm sensing somewhat of a theme that I think it's really interesting in a when we kind of step back and look at the art industry overall. And it always seems, and you mentioned it a little bit too, when the women groaned in the, because the husband or the male artist has a woman that takes care of all the different things. it almost tends to feel like, at least to me in my past, that a man automatically right away is considered a professional, but a female artist in the art industry, to some degree, has to really work to get that word professional next to their name or to be seen as a professional. So there's this big difference, I think, that's out there. No different than the rest of the world. I mean, on whole, women are out trying to be, have equal rights, equal pay, equal, everything that men may get, and without turning it into too much of a civil war between the sexes. I think there really is this dichotomy that's going on, that men artists get that professional label right away, and female artists work a little bit. Do you sense that? Do you see that? Is that one of the reasons why you're more drawn to, like, women and science fields are, still struggling? I know when I started at Procter and Gamble, I didn't realize, because I was younger, that engineering wasn't a field that women walked into very easily. So at the time where I'm trying to, make this human resource director realize, he said he shouldn't have dared me to try to become a manager without a college degree. I'm out there trying to fight that. They're out there trying to fight their way into an engineering field. So do you see in Massachusetts or in your work as an artist, that dichotomy of that I mentioned, the male female thing?
Yeah, but I think I think I've got a kind of maybe a slightly local or regional viewpoint on it.
Okay.
So I haven't really gone head to head in galleries against male artists trying to get wall space. And I understand from some people that this is an issue, but in our local galleries, I think the women are relatively well represented. We have some phenomenal women on the island. I've just decided, kind of, at least for the moment, not to play in that sandbox. I'm busy making my own sandbox. I put on shows myself. I have my own themes. I do stuff because I have commissions that come in. I can afford to put on shows that I'm not necessarily depending upon the income from those shows, but they act as sort of advertising or marketing for me. And so they generate commissions for me, because I don't mind commissions. Now, some artists don't like commissions at all, but in portraiture, you kind of, commissions are your thing. But when it comes to the male-female aspect, one of the reasons that I like to paint a lot of women, especially here on the island, is because there was an artist named Stan Murphy who was very popular here decades before I arrived. I think he died right about the time I got here, which was in 2006. A fine artist with quite a range of approaches, but he liked to paint his guy friends. And that was the fishermen and this, that, and the other. And that's all well and good. My goodness, they need to be painted as well. It's not like they don't. But I really felt that nobody was painting the women of the island. And the women of the island, historically, this is actually quite a rural and agricultural and fishing history to the island. It's not all well-off people coming to sun. And I felt that those stories weren't being told. Now, I really feel very strongly that you should tell your own story. And, it's, and so I, of course, I'm not a native of the island. I didn't grow up with all of that, but I am interested in the sciences. My father was a scientist, and I had this opportunity, because I was doing this large show, to actually go, hey, well, who are the women involved in science on the island? Because they tend to be pretty quiet and just doing their thing. And I was like, let's shine a little spotlight on this, because this is interesting. And I had a number of people come up to me after the show, because they put a little bio beside each painting about how they got into science. Like us, not always a direct route. Some kind of convoluted paths to get to where they were in the sciences. And I really feel that this is what portraiture can do, that we can, you hear a lot of times people saying, well, if you have privilege of some sort, then you should use that privilege to lift others up. So I don't really go after so much social justice kind of stuff in terms of my art. It's just not what I'm really involved in. But I do like to go, hey, here's a person who would probably never have a commission a portrait. Either they wouldn't be able to afford it, or are kind of shy, or they would never think of it. Let's paint a painting of them and show how cool they are and the cool stuff that they do. So so that led me to the women in science. It's led me to just women who are inspirational on the island. There's a lovely woman who's a clothing designer in Vineyard Haven, and we often put on shows together where we spotlight interesting women that are up to neat stuff. And it's not as if I think fellows shouldn't have their portraits painted. I paint a lot of guys, and I think that's very interesting. But I think I have this opportunity to either a group of people or a particular, like in this case, women in science. But now I'm doing actors in their favorite roles, and so that's that's male and female. So it doesn't have to be. It's not so gender specific. It's more that portraiture has the interesting ability to tell stories in a way that I think is very important.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to like sit here and carry that flag around, but I'm certainly aware that there is totally a difference. I mean, depending on how many workshops that you've gone to or things that you've seen, it's typically I have a really very good friend, very well-known artist, female, and she'll go to these big conferences that have all the different people on stage or people out painting or whatever, and it's like the guys' workshops sell out first, and then and then it's like, oh well, I really wanted to study with what she gets to hear, which she shouldn't hear, because I mean, talent wise, oh my gosh, I'd rather study with her anyway. But good friend, and anyway, so she gets to hear, well, I tried to go to XYZ's, but he was sold out, so I signed up for yours, and I'm like, let me hit myself in the wall head. Whatever, because I mean, they don't understand the talent that they have in front of them. I mean, oh my gosh. So anyway, that's one of the things that I always, and I'm in a different position than you are with doing Art Chat and with doing the different stuff that we tape for Artistic Harmonies Association. It's amazing the different war stories you hear out there. And it's like, that's one of the things that Artistic Harmonies is kind of looking at is like, how do we level that playing field? So one of the ways, and by the way, for those listeners who are listening to this, you probably noticed that I haven't really been on the air lately. And one of the reasons why is because I really wanted to step back and say, how can I change this world that I see a little bit differently? So, one of them is, I don't have to go after the household names. The household names get enough promotion. Everybody knows them. But oh my gosh, in America alone, there's 1.2 million artists. There's got to be some people who are just as interesting as the folks that we all know. And that's where I ran across Elizabeth, and I thought, oh, I need to talk to her because she's got a lot of cool things going on. One of which you mentioned, you're going to be painting actors.
Yeah, and so
How
I
did this
think
start?
that,
Yeah.
well, it's once again, when I got into this field and realized that I wasn't sure I was suited to be a good person in a gallery. I wasn't sure. I'm not I'm not really great with authority. That's what 30 years of working for yourself does. And I just thought, you know, one day I might be in a gallery. I'm sure, that opportunity will present itself. But in the meantime, I want to have some fun just doing my own thing. And how about if I just don't follow other people's rules on what an art career is supposed to look like? Why don't I put on my own shows? Why don't I have fun? Why don't I make it enjoyable? I did a show a few years ago. I called it A Slice of West Tisbury. It was portraits of people in West Tisbury, and I served pie. I did another show where I unveiled a bunch of portraits I had done, very quick kind of acrylic portraits, something I don't normally do. But I unveiled 20 some portraits of artists and showed their work. It was a one-day crazy show, but it was something a little bit different. I think portrait unveilings are fun because it's a surprise to see what you're unveiling, and it's usually not a bad surprise. So there's an element of fun there.
Yeah.
And so this is sort of a little theme I've taken on. So what happened during the pandemic was I was watching all of these theaters get closed, and I love theater, and I was seeing actors out of work, all of this stuff going on, but it got me thinking about the ephemeral nature of an actor in their part, that once that play run is over, the whole thing just evaporates. There's nothing there except maybe a few press clippings and a photo or two.
Mhm.
So I thought, how fun would it be to capture some actors in their favorite roles, either ones they played or ones that they would like to, a dream role of some sort,
Mm.
um, and just see what that would look like. And what's wonderful, I didn't realize, but actors are fabulous portrait subjects
Oh
because
yeah.
you don't have to like get them to loosen up or anything. They can bring it every single time. And you end up with this fabulous reference material. The actors themselves are all nervous. They're not sure if they're doing, and I'm like, you are amazing. You're fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue to paint those paintings and show them at the end of the summer at the local playhouse. As a way to bring attention to those actors and to the playhouse and to the subject of theater in general. So that's what I love. I love a win-win situation. I have a phrase that I like to use: we can all succeed. Success is not a finite quantity. There's not just only this much, and we have to wrestle each other for it. We can all succeed. So a lot of having a successful business involves you being willing to think up your own ideas, approach businesses that you might be able to partner with in some interesting way, and do a fun show, just get
Mhm.
your name out there. I think that's what's really important.
Yeah. The hardest part is, and I'm going to compare this to writing because it's very similar.
Mm,
The hardest part is getting that email list, getting those
yeah,
people who follow your work, getting
yeah,
those
yeah,
people who want to support you in your work. And
right.
it doesn't, that isn't something where you walk out with a college degree or any type of art school degree and say, well, here I am, world.
Right,
You got
exactly.
it's building relationships. You got
Yeah,
to build those relationships. And I write fictional novels, have fun with that. Um, and it's another one of those things that we're talking about. That's something I enjoy doing. So I'm doing
right.
it. And it's really interesting because if you go to like Random House or any of the big names and you say, I have a book here, or you hire an agent and the agent goes
Yeah,
to them and says, I have an author and a book here.
yeah.
And the bottom line is the big houses come back, traditional publishing houses come back and say, come back and see us when you've got, 50,000 or 100,000 readers. If I got 50,000 or 100,000 readers, I don't need you.
Right.
So it's the
Yeah,
same, it's the same thing with art. You got
yeah.
to continue to build that email list and send out those newsletters and build that relationship with each individual person. So I think that's really good. I'm going to go in. I want to read one thing off of and you're welcome to add to it later, off of your
Okay, sure.
FAQs. So one of the questions that Elizabeth has here is, what skills are essential to be successful in art? She's already laughing because she knows where I'm going. Some sort of ego the size of a jumbo jet, a complete disregard for common sense, an ability not to listen to sound advice of others, et cetera, et cetera. I love that. Now tell us the real the real skills
Well,
after
I
that.
think a lot of that is true. You have to have some degree of self-confidence, but it has to be realistic. If you need some skills yet, you can't expect someone's going to pay thousands of dollars for your art. There's a limit. I do think that there are a lot of people who do want to, they want to put you in a box, and they mean well, and it could be, parents saying, hey, that's not a really great career. You need something else to fall back on, or whatever it happens to be. So maybe your dream doesn't happen right away, but if you've got that desire, if you've got that desire, you are going to keep pulling forward, and you do need enough of an ego that you can put up with the slings and arrows, so to speak, that you will encounter along the way. People don't mean to necessarily be cruel, but art is very subjective, and not everyone is going to like what you do. Even if you have won awards with it, you might put that piece of artwork into another competition, for example, and win no awards.
Mhm.
So because of that, somebody might go, well, that's not really my style. I understand what you do, blah, blah. And you might take that to heart. And it's important. And I think I was lucky in the graphic design world. You learn not to take it to heart. If someone doesn't like the logo you developed, you make another logo, right? And so if you take that same kind of view with art, that just not everyone is going to like what you do, and don't take it personally, then it does, I think that's the ego part. You do need to have that. Yeah, I mean, of course, I was being a little facetious with that, but not but so much, you know.
Yeah,
I
I
think
loved it.
it's okay to be open. I mean, if you're an artist who wants to be in a gallery really badly, that is a fabulous goal. Um, for me, it turned out that because I was doing commissions, I was able to go a different way. For you, that might not be the thing that you want to do. You might very much want to get into Soho galleries or whatever it happens to be. I think what is important, though, is to just to know there are lots of ways to do this career, and that at different times you might do it different ways. Like right now, I'm doing a lot of commissions. Maybe 10 years from now, you'll talk to me, and I'll be showing at galleries and not doing any commissions. You know, it's okay to change. There is no should. An art career should be a certain way. No, it shouldn't. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mentor, for example, we started out doing one thing. He was teaching me certain things, and he went from landscapes. And everybody that has listened to me before knows I'm talking about Kevin McPherson. But
Oh, right.
okay. So Kevin McPherson mentored me, and we worked
super.
together for a number of years. And then Kevin decided that he wanted to go from landscapes into portraiture because he found,
Right.
you know, he changed it up. You know, a lot of what he learned with landscape could be applied to to portrait. And
Exactly.
yeah, but there was so much more for him to learn. So then he takes what he learned from that, and he's back into painting landscapes. He's off doing
Exactly.
all kind of things. There's no, I mean, one thing that I said to Kevin when I interviewed him is he is an explorer, he is an adventurer, and he's a lot like me, where if you say don't do that, I'm going to do it. So
Yeah.
don't ever dare Kevin, because he will do it, and then he'll make you do it too. So,
well, can I talk a little bit about art style then? Because
absolutely.
yeah, so that brings me to that point. You know, I think I've heard this so many from younger artists who contacted me and say, "Well, how do I develop my art style?" And and I just tell them to just paint or draw whatever it is you're going to do, because that style will come out by itself. And you should feel free to do just what Kevin McPherson did, which is, you know, you can paint any subject matter you want to. There is no, you know, sometimes if somebody is a little too long in painting only one type of thing, it really shows because they become formulaic. They haven't challenged themselves.
Yes.
And it can be difficult to step outside of that. But you know, not worrying about a style, but instead just painting, 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 or drawing, 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 whatever it is that you do. That's really important.
Yeah, get those miles of canvas in if you're, you know,
Exactly.
because that's what really goes in and develops that voice and style. And it was interesting. One time we were at a workshop, and it's one of my favorite stories to tell. It was Kevin's workshop. I was assisting him, but he also was, you know, get out here and paint. So he was urging me to paint. So I'm standing there painting, and he and I would invariably, I would see something one way, he would see something the other way, and we would invariably be sitting there arguing about it. Bless his heart, he put up with me.
Oh, that's
It
so
was so
funny.
funny because it was just one of these things that it was a constant, you know, well, why did you do that? Because it's right. No, don't tell me it's right. Tell me why you did it. Why did you see it that way? And, you know, so, and
Oh, that's great.
honestly, Kevin's voice and Kevin's style is Kevin's voice and Kevin's style.
Right, right.
There should be a technical reason in the way I look at it. There should be, because I was grown up in science, technical
Sure.
Procter and Gamble. So it was one of these things where it's like, you know, why did you do that? Why is it that color? Why are you seeing it as that color? And because I don't see it as that color, I see it as some other color, or I see it as some other temperature or whatever. And that
Right.
was probably the crux of Kevin and mine's. You know, some people thought we were arguing, but no, we were discussing. I mean, we weren't mad at one another or anything. I was
Right,
trying to
exactly.
understand.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he gave me a wonderful compliment later on and said, you know, you made me a better teacher because you asked those questions, and you know,
Right.
made me think about, why am I telling her that that's the right thing to do? And then, of course, I have another artist, well-known artist on Art Chat, and I was talking to her, and I said, and we named it the myths and realities of creating a painting. And the first thing I said to her is, you know, what are the rules? And she says, the first rule is there are no rules. And I was
Right,
like, well, that's the end
exactly.
of the show. We'll talk to you later. But but exactly, it is exactly that. Is there are some technical foundational things, and I know you do a lot with drawing, and I want you to talk about the drawing
Oh, sure.
competition or show, whatever it is
Sure.
that you have on. Tell us about that. But there are certain things about if drawing, but if you're going to go into abstract, maybe drawing isn't as important, but it is important still. So there's always these foundations of things that we need to go through. So, but tell us a little, because one of them I do believe is drawing. So tell us a little bit about that, about what you set up there on Martha's Vineyard.
Well, I'm a little fanatical about drawing, as people know. um,
But you have
so
to be for portraiture. I mean,
yeah, and I think I've always enjoyed drawing and always thought that there was some benefit to it. I mean, when I was doing screen print art back in the day, you had to be able to draw stuff. If they wanted a marlin jumping over a boat with a sunset in the back, you had to be able to do that, or
right.
50 of them, however many customers came up and asked you for crazy stuff. But what I started to notice when I got into actual painting, and I never had paid attention to this really in graphic design and all of that, but there are a lot of artists who can't draw. And some of them can get away with it, but others could really benefit from understanding how drawing works. And I think what has happened is that, so people who've heard me in my drawing classes will know this already, but we had sort of a rather structured way to teach drawing in the early 1900s. And then when abstract expressionism came along, it sort of wiped out all of that kind of more, the academic approach or the idea that everybody should be competent at drawing. And I think that what it did was it didn't just take away that learned skill from artists, it took it away from people in general, because people in general were being taught, hey, here's how you do a nice little watercolor, here's how you do a nice little drawing. And the benefit to that was that they were understanding how difficult it was to do art and had a greater appreciation in general, particularly for representational art. Now, I like abstract art as well. It isn't as if I don't. But I think what we're doing now over the last probably 10 to 20 years is we're starting to try to relearn all of that lost information. So I often refer back to texts and examples and artists that were operating sometimes as illustrators, sometimes, just in the fine arts in between probably about 1915 and 1945. There's a wealth of knowledge to learn there. So somewhere along the line, when I was getting interested in all of that, I realized that just like an art career can be created out of thin air, basically, I could create a competition too. I was like, well, why not? What does it really take? I need to have prizes and I need to have judges and I need a place to do it. So luckily, there are now a number of websites, and I use one called Call for Artists, but there are others as well, where you can create a competition and people can submit their work and the jurors can go and judge it right on the website, and then you can have prizes. So I decided I wanted to encourage excellence in drawing and just see what happened. And my idea to start with was, just a local audience. But what I ended up with was an international competition,
Wow.
just North America. Canada and United States. And the reasons why I have left it at that is because we have a lot of shared culture, throughout the states and provinces. And I thought it was really wonderful to ask people to bring that aspect of our culture and life into their drawing, but also it made it a little bit easier on the judges, not to have to judge things from too many different countries, too many different aspects. So each year I've had a theme of some sort. Last year it was home. And this year it's just discover. And so you never know what people are going to submit. Sometimes the people submit things that have nothing to do with the subject matter, which is part of every competition. But what's really wonderful is the fact that people out there are really rediscovering drawing in a major way. And I would say during the 5 years, this is the fifth year of the competition. During the 5 years, I have seen, like if you go to Instagram and look at drawings, there's some fantastic work out there. And it's starting to get much more recognition and everything from silver point to charcoal to pencil, whatever it happens to be. So that was one thing I did was I started that. And then during the pandemic, I started offering free drawing classes online. And when you talk about how to build connections and build your own market, I'm terrible about sending out newsletters. I probably sent out two. I'm really awful, and I'm bad about collecting emails. But what has happened is that during the pandemic, when I started doing these free art classes, and I kind of partnered with a local library to make that happen, I ended up with 200 people who would come to these classes every week. And they became sort of the basis of kind of a group of people who were supportive of me and my work, some
Mm.
who've commissioned, some who've bought things from me, this, that, and the other. So there is no one way to get your market either.
Right.
Um, and I took that on. In fact, I noticed in my little Zoom window as I'm talking to you, it says Elizabeth Sketching rather than Elizabeth Whelan. And the reason it says that is because another thing I started doing, because I'm crazy and I can get up early in the morning, is I started this thing called Grab a Pencil Breakfast Club, where it's 6:30 in the morning every Tuesday. I did it last winter and did it this winter, just going to wind up in about a month. People log on, and it's not a class, but I just find a travel webcam somewhere around the world, and we draw for an hour, wherever that happens to be, Japan or Italy or Germany or whatever it happens to be. And it's just a way to encourage people to draw. And that way, when they're traveling in the summer or doing whatever, they feel that, hey, I know that within an hour I can get a sketch done, because I did it 14 times this winter during these Grab a Pencil Breakfast Club sessions. So I think that that is how you start to make a career that's fulfilling for yourself. You find things that you personally feel very passionate about it, and you try to create a community around that. So
Mm.
now I've got people who for 3 years have been part of these classes. Like I said, everything is free because I just really felt that what the heck, it's drawing. I just want people to start it. But a cool thing happened at one of the shows I did last summer where we were unveiling a bunch of portraits. I had a bunch of these people show up to see the portrait unveilings who'd never met each other in real life, but they
Oh,
had seen each other's names during these classes on Zoom. So you can be a catalyst for people making connections. You can help people's artwork. You can encourage others and build this community in any way that feels natural to you. What I did might not be comfortable for somebody else to do. But
mm.
for me, drawing became this kind of thing that I could pull people in. And we'll see where it goes next.
Cool. Fascinating. So thank you for doing that too, because I think you're absolutely right. Drawing is kind of a lost um, medium out there, and we need to get back to that. Have a lot of friends who have started their own ateliers, and
Oh,
you
cool.
don't have to get that classical drawing.
Sure,
You
sure.
can teach drawing a number of different ways, just like you could teach oil painting or any of the other medias that are out there. So, Elizabeth, I have to say, this has been one of the most refreshing art chats for me to have taped. I have enjoyed talking with you. I hope that you have enjoyed being on the show. And hopefully stay in touch. And if you got some other things coming up, and maybe we'll have you back on and in the near future and see what else has come your way. So,
That sounds great. I really enjoyed listening to your artist interviews. And I think we all have, I mean, we're joined by art, but we're all such different people and we have different takes on what's going on. And I really appreciate the time to talk to you today.
yeah, it's been a great time. So everybody, please do, again, the artist website will be up above Elizabeth's head. You good?
Thanks so much, Linda.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Art Chat is made possible by the support of the Artistics Harmonies Association. Create your next aha experience with us.